ChatGPT is marvelous, but it won't be here without tons of funding. That funding was secured by a guy named Sam Altman. Just 2 months after becoming the CEO of OpenAI, the company developing ChatGPT, Microsoft invested $1 billion, and the AI models have grown bigger and stronger ever since. A question that often comes up is, why was ChatGPT born in Silicon Valley? Part of the answer might lie with another Silicon Valley company used to be also led by Sam Altman, Y Combinator. Hi, my name is Yi, and today we are going to talk about this company behind companies, Y Combinator, or YC for short. It is a startup investment company headquartered in Mountain View, California. Compared to their Wall Street counterparts, YC has a distinct personality. They are more like a group of hackers than business elites, especially in the early days. The name Y Combinator itself is a programming concept used to implement recursion in languages that don't natively support it. Recursion breaks down complex problems into a series of simpler ones, then deduces the answer to the complex problem from the results of the simpler ones. This cleverly parallels the process of nurturing ambitious startups from scratch and helping them grow step by step. The name Y Combinator might baffle those in the business world, but tech enthusiasts instantly get it. Beyond the name, YC's approach to nurturing new businesses is also project-oriented. Unlike traditional business companies, YC not only invests money but also provides manpower, technical resources, and networking opportunities to help tech companies succeed. This unique model has allowed YC to produce a plethora of star-studded tech enterprises. While YC's fame may not be on par with Silicon Valley's biggest names like Apple, Google, or Intel, it has incubated over 3,500 companies with a total market value of nearly $1 trillion since its founding in 2005. 18 years ago, this entrepreneurial powerhouse was just a small startup with a $200,000 seed fund, and the core of the team is a loving couple. However, before diving into that romantic chapter, let's start with the story of 3 tech nerds. Among YC's 4 founders, 3 of them attended Harvard University. Prior to YC, these 3 achieved their first entrepreneurial success with a website called ViewWeb. ViewWeb was a shopping site that pioneered an online service architecture. Merchants didn't need to buy servers or register a website. With just a few clicks on ViewWeb, they could set up a fully functional online store. The technical challenges were quite daunting. Fortunately, the team had some exceptional talents. Among ViewWeb's 3 co-founders, Paul Graham and Trevor Blackwell were a bit unconventional. As founders of a tech company, they weren't college dropouts, and they even both got PhD degrees. In comparison, Robert Morris followed a more traditional path, successfully dropped out during his undergraduate studies. To be precise, Robert was forced to leave for a year from Harvard. In the early 1970s, Harvard was part of the internet prototype ARPANET. By the time Robert started school in the 1980s, Harvard had disconnected from ARPANET due to bit decay. Nobody cared, but curiosity drove Robert to spend a semester reconnecting Harvard to ARPANET, neglecting his studies and leading to a forced 1-year leave. Robert eventually returned to earn his undergraduate degree, but the trouble caused by his curiosity and technical prowess had just begun. During his graduate studies, Robert Morris wanted to know if it was possible to control all computers on a network, which led to one of the FBI's most notorious cyber cases, the Morris worm. It paralyzed the North American computer network and earned Robert the title of the first convicted cyber hacker in history. That's why you won't find Robert's name on ViewWeb's personnel list. However, at the bottom, you'll see someone named John McRTM, whose email name, RTM, is exactly the abbreviation for Robert Tappan Morris, the technical genius behind ViewWeb. While at Harvard, Robert often coded late into the night, which led to meeting fellow late-night programmer and graduate student Paul Graham, who became a good friend. How close were they? A week before the infamous Morris worm crippled the North American network, Paul Graham emailed Robert asking, "Any news on the brilliant project?" According to later testimonies, on November 2, 1988, The night the worm spiraled out of control, Robert's first phone call was to Paul Graham. So in 1995, when Paul Graham decided to create VWeb, he immediately called his good friend, computer genius Robert Morris, who had already completed 3 years of probation. However, just a month in, the computer prodigy was unhappy, saying, "I've been working on this for a month and it's still not done." That's when Paul Graham knew it was time to expand the team. He asked Robert who the smartest person he knew was, and Robert recommended Trevor Blackwell. With the 12's technical prowess combined, they laid the foundation for today's e-commerce websites and various SaaS online services. Of course, the value of this technology soon became apparent. In 1998, Yahoo acquired VWeb for $49 million. After achieving financial freedom, the three tech enthusiasts began to enjoy a carefree lifestyle. Trevor Blackwell, who joined later, founded the robotics company Anybots. The computer genius Robert Morris returned to Harvard for his doctoral research, while Paul Graham semi-retired, writing articles and code, giving speeches, and hosting parties. Along the way, he found love. In 2003, Paul Graham hosted a gathering at his home, where he met Jessica Livingston, who was working at an investment bank in Boston at the time. After this event, the two began dating. Jessica was drawn to Paul's intellect and wisdom, later recalling that she never thought she'd listen to anyone until she met him. Conversations with Paul Graham were undoubtedly fascinating, given his background as a writer, successful entrepreneur, and his legendary friend who had once brought down the North American computer network. Jessica was particularly interested in the stories of how these three friends revolutionized internet technology and changed the world. In the early 2000s, amid the burst of the internet bubble and financial contraction, Jessica's investment banking job grew increasingly dull. Inspired by Paul's stories, she became more interested in startups, so she quit her job and started looking for work in venture capital. Frustrated by the slow responses of these investment firms, and with Paul Graham also eager to collaborate with his old friends on something new, the couple decided to join forces. In March 2005, they founded a venture capital firm together. Soon after, Paul Graham brought Robert and Trevor back into the fold, completing the four-person team and officially launched Y Combinator. The four founders initially had little experience in venture capital, so they decided to organize a student startup camp called the Summer Founders Program. Students formed teams to work on projects, with each project eligible to receive up to $20,000 in funding. In return, YC would receive 5 to 7% equity in each project. However, the founders didn't take these equity stakes too seriously. According to Paul Graham, the money given to the students was like the tuition they had to pay to learn how to nurture startups. By spending this money, they could gain valuable experience in the startup world. The students, on the other hand, could earn money and have a meaningful summer vacation without wasting their time. Little did they know that these casual experiments would lead them straight to the code of success. The first batch of student projects from the summer of 2005, labeled ISO-File, produced Reddit, which was valued at $10 billion in its latest funding round in 2021. In addition to this star company, other students from the program now hold high-level positions in major corporations. Notable examples include Twitch CEO Emmett Shear and famous Sam Altman. Sam later became the president of Y Combinator and then led OpenAI, which has been burning through cash while rising to prominence, just like any startup. However, there were also tragedies among the group. One of the SO5 students and Reddit co-founders committed suicide in 2013, though this event was unrelated to the startup itself. Returning to the topic of entrepreneurship, YC's first trial and error proved to be an overwhelming success, far exceeding expectations from any perspective. This unexpected success can be attributed to several factors: the clustering of talent, YC's unique approach, and the pivotal role of Jessica Livingston. Firstly, YC's experiments inadvertently brought together creative students rather than business people. Instead of being a venture capital firm, YC's approach made it more like a university, fostering an environment where students could make significant progress. In an article summarizing the ISO5 experience, Paul Graham provided an example. The tech-savvy students they selected were all extremely talented, but they were not skilled at public speaking. However, presentations and pitches to investors were an unavoidable part of the process. During rehearsals, every team performed poorly to the point where the founders didn't know how to help. They even warned the investors ahead of time that the students' products were good, but their presentations might not be. Surprisingly, on the day of the presentations, each team's pitch was exceptional, as if they had spent the past week at an acting school. Paul Graham described their progress as surprising, slightly frightening even. He believed that the reason for this was the clustering of talent. As students practiced, they saw the issues other teams faced, reflected on their own performances, and discussed and exchanged ideas with one another. This led to high learning efficiency and impressive final presentations. In addition to bringing these talented youngsters together, YC's attitude towards students was also distinct from other startup incubators. Paul Graham believed that YC was the complete opposite of the popular incubators from the dot-com bubble era, which he considered to be ineffective. This so-called innovation basis was even more controlling than traditional venture capital firms. They brought startups into their spaces and expected entrepreneurs to follow standardized processes. In contrast, Paul Graham implemented a completely different strategy at YC. He encouraged students to follow their own ideas and make independent decisions. He wrote in an article that the feeling of "this is my own company" was crucial for entrepreneurial success. Paul Graham's strategy proved to be effective. Throw hackers off a cliff, and most will find on the way down that they have wings. After one summer, the students seem to have grown tremendously, surprising themselves with their accomplishments and gaining confidence. This atmosphere of freedom made YC more like a university than an investment company. If YC were a university for hackers, its success would rely on a discerning admissions director, Jessica Livingston. The magical chemistry among the SO5 students was a result of the gathering of talent, an autonomous atmosphere, and their eagerness to share. The ability to pick out such individuals from the candidates relied on this female co-founder's keen eyes. Through her past experience in marketing and investment analysis, Jessica honed her ability to recognize talent. At YC, she was known as the social reader, able to determine an applicant's trustworthiness and passion for the community within a few questions. These students, along with the entrepreneurs who joined later, formed YC's vast founder alumni network, becoming one of the core strengths of this entrepreneurial university. Interestingly, if you examine YC's SO5 batch closely, you'll notice that besides the first 10 projects, there's an 11th startup, Y Combinator. This means that the 4 founders considered YC as part of the SO5 teams, not placing themselves above the students. In this entrepreneurial university, there's mutual learning and equality between teachers and students. After a successful first batch, YC set out to grow and expand their model. In early 2006, they launched the second round of student projects, known as W06. This biannual collaborative training model continued, and YC entered Silicon Valley, infusing the tech industry with fresh talent. In 2007, they launched Hacker News, a geeky version of Reddit, which quickly became a gathering place for tech enthusiasts, further expanding their talent pool. By W08, YC incubated Heroku, an online platform for app developers, reminiscent of ViaWeb in design. In 2010, Salesforce acquired Heroku for $212 million, putting YC on a profitable and accelerating trajectory. YC alumni, such as Sam Altman, also grew up and contributed back to YC. As a member of the first batch of students in 2005, Sam not only honed his own business skills but also learned seed investing from his mentors. In 2012, he sold his YC-incubated company Looped for $43.4 million, yet became even more involved with YC. He soon founded Hydrogen Capital, investing 75% of his funds into YC companies, including leading Reddit's Series B funding round. This mutually beneficial relationship saw Hydrogen's valuation increase to 10x in just 4 years, also reflecting the quality of YC companies. However, as YC rapidly expanded, the founders Paul Graham and Jessica Livingston decided to retire, leaving Sam Altman, whom Paul praised for his ability to become powerful, to take the helm as YC's second-generation leader in 2014. By then, the combined value of YC-incubated companies reached $14.4 billion, transforming YC from a summer program into a true university of innovation. Under Sam Altman's leadership, YC reached new heights. Within a year and a half, YC Continuity Fund was launched, providing ongoing support for successful startups with valuations below $300 million. In addition to funding, YC offered senior management talent when needed, further extending its support for early-stage companies. 2 years later, YC introduced the YC Growth Program, continuing support for mid-sized companies with 50 to 100 employees that had completed Series A funding. As YC expanded, Sam Altman also guided the organization into broader realms, such as nuclear fusion and artificial intelligence. He believed that with technological progress, these once nation-driven research fields became accessible to startups, and YC's innovative model would empower ambitious entrepreneurs. Sam not only talked the talk, but he also walked the walk. Year after year, these impossible missions started showing progress, such as breakthroughs in nuclear fusion technology and the development of ChatGPT, which Sam Altman personally championed. Considering all these achievements, it's more fitting to describe YC's story as the growth journey of a new kind of entrepreneurial university rather than a history of a venture capital firm. In the winter 2022 program, YC received 17,000 applications, accepting only 414, making their admission rate even lower than Harvard, the alma mater of Will Webb's technical trial. However, the mandatory investments from YC aren't that alluring. Today, YC provides $500,000 to each new company, which isn't a small sum, but it comes with a significant equity stake. This investment is split into two parts. First, $125,000 with YC taking a 7% equity stake. Second, $375,000 without YC taking as much equity, but they demand most favored nation status. This means if your company succeeds and its valuation rises, YC won't immediately take a large portion of equity for their second investment, but must receive better terms than any other investor you find later. For example, if another company is willing to invest $375,000 for only a 1% stake, YC's second investment must also be calculated with a 1% stake. This is called the most favored nation treatment, and of course, it favors YC. From an entrepreneur's perspective, this arrangement isn't particularly enticing. First, the terms for the second investment are clear. YC must enjoy the best conditions in terms of equity. Then, the first $125,000 investment, considered a seed round or angel round, offers terms that are much better than industry standards. Research has shown that for most US venture capital firms, $125,000 in a seed round would typically get about 2.1% equity, and in a subsequent angel round, it would drop to 0.8%. Yet YC demands a full 7% equity stake. Despite these terms, we still see a flood of applications, fierce competition, and an admission rate even lower than Harvard. This proves that talented individuals with big dreams value things other than just YC's money. As we've mentioned before, YC's role goes beyond being a simple investment firm. It's actually the University of Innovation. Now, regarding our opening question, why was ChatGPT born in Silicon Valley? Y Combinator is only part of the answer. Innovation is a complex topic that can't be fully explained in a short video. However, YC's growth story provides a successful example that sheds light on one aspect of it. Of course, there are challenges faced by YC and Silicon Valley, such as the collapses of large commercial banks and the potential stagnation and the decline of early-stage spirit due to the increasing size of established companies. But today, we mainly discuss YC's successful side, and through their story, we can reflect on the process of technological innovation. We need to think about what role we could play in this innovation process based on our own skill sets and personalities. That's where the money is in this era of technology. Joining this process can be very meaningful for each of us. How to do that, though, requires individual thought based on our unique circumstances. A quote from Paul Graham, when reflecting on the first batch of YC students in 2005, including Sam Altman, is an appropriate way to conclude this video. Hackers are more likely to succeed as entrepreneurs than MBAs, because while they also want to get rich, they don't gamble on the ups and downs of the stock market. Instead, they make money by making products people can use and changing the world. That's it for today's video. If you liked it, please hit the like and subscribe button, and leave your thoughts in the comment section. This is E from Unitech, and I'll see you in the next one.